Hello, hello. Thank you for tuning in to Kind of Fake News.
Where you can't take us too seriously.
Oh, let's start over. Where we don't take ourselves too seriously, right? Okay, yeah, where we don't take ourselves too seriously.
Blooper reel. Hello, hello. Thank you for tuning in to Kind of Fake News.
Where we don't take ourselves too seriously.
And you can't fact check half of this.
We delve into tons of different topics here. I definitely want to start off with a shout out to Michael Anthony for making this all possible and Turn It Up Live.
Turn it up.
Turn it up. And then you can go to the www.turnitupproductions.com. That's with one P, Turn It Up Productions. And you can find all of our podcasts there, as well as Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We're all over there. So subscribe, like, all that good stuff. We have our astrology guru here, Sarah Sanchez. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. And we have our conspiracy head, Jarett Cicero.
What's up?
And then I will be doing all the holistic alternatives talk. I'm Celina Bryan. So we'll just delve right into things. Sarah, what do you have for us today?
So I have the typical astrology stuff and then some little like self-care tips afterwards. So I'm only going to cover like 3 transits and just like go over the moons quick. But then we can talk about how you guys or how we celebrate like new moons and full moons. So that'll be fun. So April 9th, that's the first. So that's just the first really major thing that's going to impact us is Mars is square Neptune. So Neptune it rules like dreams, intuition, psychic abilities, but also creation, like illusion and like being aware of things. And then Mars, of course, the planet of action, desire, passion, war, aggression, all of that. So that's squaring Neptune. And if you remember when planets square each other, it's sort of, it doesn't flow smoothly. It's sort of a harsher alignment. And so what this brings is, not to be the Debbie Downer, but it brings a lot of like depression and anguish. It's really a time of like scandals, secrets in your relationships. You might like in your romantic relationships, you might feel like paranoid, suspicious. There might be jealousy, vindictive behavior. So it's really a time highlighting those kinds of things. You could become the victim of like gossip or end up in a scandal. So it's kind of like not a time to really take on you don't want to like meet a lot of new people or take on really new projects. It's kind of really just a time to like mind your own business. Just
perfect during COVID where no one's really going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of hard to be like secretive and jealous if you're in a relationship during COVID. It's like, where are you going?
Right. Yeah. I mean, a lot of
like
people are.
The last one from last month almost said like kind of like the opposite. It was like you're supposed to get out there, shake it up and see what's going on.
And now it's like, what?
And it's like you gotta cool down.
And it's so interesting because these periods can shift, right? Where there will be like totally different feels throughout the month, right? So this is like the beginning of the month, and the 9th is just that day where they're exactly aligned that way, but they're approaching during, right? So it's those influences and energies you start to feel them before that, you feel it after it, right? Maybe not right on that date, but it's kind of just like the beginning of April. It's just kind of icky, right? Like icky things in relationships. But then the 19th is Taurus season. Sun enters Taurus. And it was Aries before that. So that's kind of, you can feel that shift where the 19th, and Taurus is really, it's about practicality, realism, firmness, the ability to concentrate. It's a really grounding energy. And so it shifts from that a little bit. I feel like that helps you kind of gain your center back. The energies are more stabilizing for you. And then at the end of the month, the 27th, Pluto is retrograde in Capricorn. And this happens every year. Like, this is an annual thing, right? So it's going to be until October 6th. So it's like however many months. It's a good portion of the year, and it happens every year. So I thought that was interesting because now Pluto is the planet of mysteries in life and spirit, like bad or good, right? It's about life, spirituality, and whether it's bad or good, right? It's kind of the reawakener. It's about power, the subconscious, secrets and transformation, right? So in forward, Pluto projects power outward, but in retrograde, it projects power inward. So this is actually a pretty healing time for Pluto to be retrograde. That's healing to us because it kind of strengthens the weaker parts of your body. So even like physically, it's good energies for healing. And it kind of brings, and it kind of plays off of the beginning of the month, right? Where it brings change, even forced change and forced healing, where, you have to do certain things, you have to make changes that ultimately end up being healing, but you are really, really pressured and pushed into it because of really unhealthy situations or really toxic things, right? And so, it's one of those typical energies where, it's something that really, really sucks and it's a lot of pressure, but it ends up being something healing in the end. It ends up being a really good choice. And it's like one of those things that something crappy happens and it changes you a lot, but then you look back and you're glad it happened.
Like, it's like a lesson learned. You have to go through it to get something out of it.
Yeah. So yeah. So what it does. Yeah. So what it does is
settles on the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but it's a time that, like,
I had to give that one an extra laugh.
What?
I had to give it an extra laugh.
Oh yeah. Get it all out. But so it's kind of a time where the truth comes out, any internal issues come to the surface for resolution. And that's interesting to me because, like, a lot of people, we don't want to feel like icky feelings, or when we feel discomfort, sadness, grief, anger, we try to like shove it down deep. But when those things come up, when situations happen that they trigger those things, it's actually a really good thing, because when it comes up and you're triggered, it's a chance to heal those things. So I really like to look at whenever I feel triggered as an opportunity to heal something that's kind of just sits in there otherwise, right? So that's kind of the theme towards the end of the month. I feel like it starts off like really, really icky kind of feelings, but then it stabilizes a little more and it turns more into like transformation and change. You'll see things change because of that. You'll make necessary changes, and that'll be better in the long run, I feel like. And it's all like, because the new moon is on the 11th, right? And it's in Aries, and the new moon is always about like setting intentions, things like that. And it's more about rebirth, newness, new beginnings. And then at the end of the month, there's the super pink full moon. And this also, because it's happening in spring, it's also about rebirth. It's also about newness and things like that. And it's more of a time to implement changes that you've been planning, right? So I feel like the beginning of the month, you kind of, with all those energies, you start to plot out your changes. You start to realize and feel what doesn't work, what's not good. And then towards the end of the month, the energies are really supportive to just like make those changes. And actually make progress, right? It's not the time to plot, it's the time to implement. And that's when you really start to see the action, is towards the end of the month. Mm-hmm.
Now,
yeah.
also with that, so like a red moon I've heard of, a blue moon I've heard of, but like a pink moon I've never heard of that one. Does the shade of the moon actually look that color, or is that just an interpreted color?
So it's just like the blue moon that they say. It's not actually blue, but they just call, so it's the pink moon because it's, honestly, I don't know exactly why the names are the way they are,
but they assign a color for that intention.
Yeah, and it represents spring. You're kind of like shaking off the heaviness of winter in general.
Right. Okay.
And I feel like all the other energies really indicate that as well, that they're really supportive of that. So but then the next thing I wanted to go over was some grounding techniques. How do you guys ground? Like, do you have any techniques that you use to do that?
I would say for me, it's car rides by myself. I'll go like a country back road, just like kind of, because I'm a very social person. I always love being around socialization often. And sometimes I'll just like turn everything off and just roll the windows down, country road, feel the air. And it's like one of the few times I feel like secluded.
Yeah. It's really important to have, because everyone's different, right? So for me, something that's really calming and grounding is a fan.
I need like a fan or an air conditioner just to sleep.
I'm the opposite. I can't. I will wake up stuffy.
Really? That's funny.
Everyone I know wants a fan. I'm just like, I'm not all congested.
Oh yeah, I hear that. Well, because I do too, but I just won't stop.
Right. You're like, whatever.
I'll just face it away from me. Even in the winter, if I'm freezing, I'll have it on, but I'll just face it away from me.
But it's like more the noise for you?
Yeah, it's just soothing. And then sometimes if you're really anxious, like it blowing on you is just really calming. And I just feel like it's really super calming, and in a way that nothing else really does, like music or whatever. It's not it's the same thing as like white noise, I feel like. So one of the really important things for grounding is walking barefoot in the grass, or barefoot like on the earth. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I have heard of that.
Like actually touching,
connecting yourself physically with the earth.
Yep, literally like touching trees, right? Your feet touching the actual ground, because what happens is there's a transfer of energy, right? And so the earth can absorb things and then replenish our energy with things. And one of the really important things that I think is important to cover, especially just because of the energies this month, people, it'll be very triggering. You'll be changing a lot. And it's really important to know how to take care of yourself during those things. And emotions too. It's important to ground emotions themselves, right? So if you feel a really strong emotion, like anything, anger, and you don't actually ground it and get it out, it kind of just stays in your body. And so it's really important. It really is important to express your anger in safe ways. But a lot of people think, oh, I just want to, avoid it or not shove it down. And it's kind of that like toxic positivity, in my opinion, where you try to avoid feeling that way in general.
Can you explain that term? I think that's an important term, toxic positivity.
Toxic positivity. Yeah. So sorry, let me get this out of my way here. So toxic positivity is essentially, it's not real, right? It's not real positivity. It's not real healing. It's just so fake, right? Where it's like, oh, just be happy. Other people have it worse. Crying isn't going to make it better. Smile, because being sad isn't going to help. It's basically treating like negative emotions like they shouldn't exist. They don't deserve to be acknowledged. And
I feel like you're talking about me.
No,
I'm that person that's just like, you know what? I'm not gonna be mad about this. There's, you know, somebody starving across the world right now. Like,
no. So it's if you genuinely feel that way, right? But it's
right.
And I think it's more only toxic positivity if you're sort of shutting down other people's emotions, right?
Okay. See, I do it more to myself, or like as you stated, like kind of like keeping it in. You know, I'm like, I need to not do that because I don't want to be like a ticking time bomb. I kind of just turn other cheek with situations a lot. And then when I do it for a long enough time, I'll start to get into like a rut. So I keep telling myself, I gotta like, you know, tackle things as they make you upset and deal with your own emotions internally instead of just ignoring things. And because I just keep myself busy instead of like facing some of those emotions. So
and that energy really just stays in your body too, because a lot of people, it's sometimes we build up and it comes out, but sometimes it just stays in there and just continues to do damage to us physically, emotionally. We won't know. Like, have you ever ignored something so long or found yourself like in a bad mood and you just don't know why? You're just not feeling it that day, or you're just not, chances are there's something in there that you've brushed aside to the point where you're not even familiar, you're not even able to label what it is,
like
but it still affects you. Yeah, exactly. So I think the toxic positivity is when there is something that hurts or something that really is difficult, and you try to put a Band-Aid on that with, oh, just smile, it'll make you feel happier, or anything like that. When actual positivity you would be like, okay, well, I'm here to hold space for you and listen to you. Would you like a tissue? You know, this is difficult. Yeah, you know, just
the name of the show.
Like literally just saying, I know that this sucks, you know, but I'm here. Because that's really the only thing. It's toxic positivity is when you're just not even being authentic, or you're not allowing others to be authentic, because those feelings happen. They're going to come up. You're going to have pain, and it's the way we deal with it is the difference in whether we truly genuinely heal and move forward feeling whole and feeling good, or we kind of just over time kind of forget about something and we sort of walk around with all those same wounds. And it's so often you can see it. Like I feel like I see it right off the bat in people. I'm like, oh, that's unhealed.
It's like you need an emotional cleansing.
So it's like unhealthy acceptance, kind of.
Right.
Not seeing the forest through the trees. But then you hear other things like fake it until you make it. So there's like,
like this is all the stuff that I go by.
There's a lot of these sayings that like conflict, even though
if it helps you though. If it helps you,
it does.
Like, if it helps you, then you know, then that's absolutely, it's whatever.
I've just always felt like it's better than the ladder of like, today sucks and everything sucks. So I'm like, oh well.
Right.
Because if you walk up to somebody and your cashier is smiling, you're going to be in a better mood, even if you weren't, versus if your cashier wasn't smiling. Like,
and I think that's natural too. Like when you're at work, right? Because you don't want to go too far the other way where you're sort of like, oh, who cares what you do? You're upset, right? You have the right to yell at a customer, which, you know, you don't. And so when it comes to like work or things that you have to do, right?
Good point.
I think, absolutely. Put that smile on. Like you're getting paid to be there. You know, nobody needs to know
what paid to smile.
Exactly. And so work is work, right? And then just common decency is common decency. You shouldn't not hold the door open for someone because you had a bad day. You know what I mean?
Right.
But then you also, when you think about it, or when you try to talk to someone about it and you need to, you know, lay it on someone, I think then not acknowledging your feelings, not allowing them to be, right? So
being honest with yourself.
Right.
At the end of the day, when it's just you gotta, you know what's real and what isn't, you know.
Exactly.
So
and
like
I think that
perpetuation of pain if you just keep.
Right.
Exactly.
Some people make it their worm.
And you start to lose touch with yourself completely when you don't acknowledge and honor your pain. Like a really big thing that I especially learned lately is even if there's something that we don't want to care about or we don't want it to affect us in a certain way, if you pretend that you don't, or you pretend that you're okay with things, you don't have healthy boundaries, you're ultimately betraying yourself, and you kind of lose touch with yourself. You're not connecting with yourself. You're treating yourself badly. And so you really do have a relationship with yourself. And so if you're feeling a negative emotion, a big thing that's really important to me that I always say is like, honor that emotion, acknowledge that emotion, sit with it, right? Because if we don't sit with the tough emotions, we don't process them, because really healing is so simple, I think, and we complicate it more. It's really, you just feel it to heal it, right? If you just let yourself be upset when you're upset, you're processing your emotions while you're feeling it. And then you feel it until it doesn't need to be felt anymore, and it naturally goes away. Like, I always joke with people that when I was younger and way more dramatic, like if I had a breakup, yeah, a friend did something, I would cry for days, right? Like days.
Like the world was ending.
I'd be writing poems. It's so dramatic. I'd be playing music. But then
I'm wearing black today.
Exactly. But here's the thing: when I was younger, I could get over a 3-year relationship in 3 days. Do you know what I mean? Because you just let it out. You let it out, and then it's done, right? There's nothing there to be felt anymore.
You're like purging it.
Exactly. And the older we get, we think we have to act a certain way or do a certain thing, or we shouldn't feel that way, or we shouldn't care about that. So we try not to. And then it just lingers and lingers until you just feel it. That's why when we cry, we feel better, right? When we freak out or get angry, we feel better. And I think it is healthy to punch pillows, you know?
I was just about to say how you said with grounding, like I said, I go for a ride, but some people might just go to the weight room or like get a punching bag or whatever.
And I think it depends what emotion, right? Because grounding yourself in general, there's a type of grounding yourself in general, connecting with the earth. And what is it? Like something I see, something I can smell, something I can taste, something I can touch, right? And I think that really helps a lot, especially with anxiety, right? But also then there's certain emotions that you're going to probably ground different based on what emotion, right? So if you're angry, you're going to punch a pillow. If you're sad, you can write a poem or write a letter to someone, you know?
Yeah, I think writing is a great avenue.
It really is.
Also through like, you know, through the lack of knowledge or pretending to know things one way, or a lot of the stuff that you were just describing, I feel like eventually as we get older, we deprogram ourselves from really knowing how to deal with the emotions and regulate them or feel them, to even the point where it gets to where you can't even recognize when there's, you know, like great stuff happening, because you're always in this constant state of not really being honest with what's real to begin with. How are you going to notice, you know?
Right. And that's why they say like it's kind of dangerous to seclude yourself sometimes, because you need to be around friends and family that can recognize when something isn't right, because you might not even realize something isn't right. Like I went through a time period where I lost a lot of weight, and everyone kept saying like, are you okay? You lost and I've always been a skinny person, so I just played it off like, I've been skinny since I was a kid. Like, but like I look back years later at the pictures of that time period, I'm like, wow, like I didn't realize like, and it was at a time period I was going through some extreme depression and anxiety, and I didn't realize it at the time until enough people had said something to me that I'm like, okay, it wasn't just somebody with a bias, like something's going on, and now I have to look, you know, to figure out what's going on with myself. But if I hadn't had so many people say something to me, I would have completely disregarded it.
Yeah. And I think too, it's loving. I always tell people it's loving yourself enough, having enough, because I think people get mixed up what self-love is, right? I think there's a really not a super on point idea about it. And self-love, in my opinion, is really about forgiving yourself, giving yourself grace, having compassion for yourself. And when you have those tools and those feelings in that relationship with yourself, you're able to admit really hard things about yourself, where you'd be able to admit, oh, I've lost a lot of weight, I'm depressed, I'm this, and be able to say that and be okay, right? Be able to, because when I was younger, I used to have a little bit of an anger problem. You guys know. You guys know. And here's the thing though. At the time, I did not know that I was mean or that I was bitchy at all. I didn't realize it. And it wasn't until, well, I realized it wasn't normal, right? To just
start screaming at people.
And at the same time, it wasn't until a family member of mine and my boyfriend at the time both came to me, and what really helped me realize it is that they were scared to say it.
Right.
Like I could see the fear.
It was like an anger intervention.
They were so like timid, and they both were like, have you ever, like stumbling over the words, like, have you ever like thought about getting like, I don't know, maybe like going to like anger management or something? They were so scared. And that was the day I realized, I was like, oh shit.
Is that serious?
Yeah. I'm like, I guess it's not normal to just like beat somebody up when they make you mad.
Little Sarah over there.
But so for me, it's like, I still have that nature to me. I still can be very intense, very passionate, and I can get really angry really easily. But it's just, so that's why it's so important for me now to know how to ground certain emotions and not direct them at people. And I think a big thing too is like, you have to realize where your anger is being triggered from, right? That's a huge thing. Like for me personally, it was boundaries, right? I would have no boundaries with someone. And then, so it's like you feel violated or used or, you know, taken advantage of over and over again until you flip out, right? But if you just keep those healthy boundaries around you and you're able to ask yourself, what do I need, right? What do I need to feel okay? And I think that was just something that I wasn't used to doing then, right? Or just didn't have the tools. And once you have those tools, when you're able to take care of yourself, you don't run into those same issues. And that's why I always say, you have to be able to get to know yourself. You have to know how to take care of yourself and be able to ask yourself, what do I need right now? And I think that's a huge, even just over the last couple of years, I've been really learning to do that. You know, because I had went through like separation a couple of years ago. It was really bad. It was really hard. And there was a lot of emotions. And I really kind of was forced to learn how to take care of myself, nurture myself. Because when you go through those tough things, you know, it's kind of like that Pluto energy where you don't have the choice. You have to learn how to do those things. And I feel like that's really what the energy of this month is about. It's really about like having so much emotion and icky things that you have to take care of yourself. You have to change some things. You have to break patterns.
For sure. And actually, everything you said about April goes perfectly into the next segment with the holistic alternatives. So again, thank you, Sarah, for your astrology review. The holistic review that I'm doing is on the like anxiety and depression. So that kind of ties right into the end of April when people might be more anxious. There is such an influx of anxiety and depression. Anyone who's dealt with it has a lot more understanding, but there's people out there that have never had to go through anxiety or depression or don't really know anyone who has it, or if someone has it. So I thought it would be
There's
good.
people that laugh at.
Right. There's people that's like, oh, you're having a bad day. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people that don't get it. And I've been in that place in the past where I didn't get it. I'm just like, well, why don't you just, make it better? Like, I didn't realize how much of a physical and emotionally locking thing that it is.
Got a whole,
So just to kind of break it down a little bit. So depression is feelings of misery and despondency, loss of interest in activities causing daily life impairment, categorized as a mental health disorder. And then a lot of time depression can be coupled with anxiety together. Anxiety, intense, excessive persistence of fear and worry for everyday situations, causing sweating, fast heart rate, tiredness, rapid breathing, so on and so forth. So some people may have these mildly, and some people it's so debilitating that they just going to work in general is too much to handle. So most of the time when you get diagnosed, there's a whole litany of medications and medicines they usually prescribe, like Celexa, Zoloft, benzos, citalopram, Lexatine, like
Blah, blah, blah,
blah, blah, blah, blah, blah, blah, which I'm not a doctor. I say this every time. Don't just cut off some medication because you heard of a good holistic alternative.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm a doctor. Dr. LeCicero. So don't change any routines on anything that you hear in the holistic review. Always consult with your doctor first, of course. But it's always good to at least first couple some holistic alternatives with your medication, or talk with your doctor about, okay, I've been trying these holistic alternatives that are working well. Like maybe you can wean off of a medication if you're trying to, go a holistic route. And a lot of people with medications like that, you're kind of like a pincushion. Like they're like, well, this typically helps for your situation, but we'll put on for a month or two and we'll see what happens. And you can have horrible negative effects, and then you have to try the next one and then the next one. So if you haven't started any serious medication yet, maybe try some holistic alternatives first. So I'm just going to actually run down a list and then go back and pick out a few ones that I want to go more into detail with. So there's things like supplements, Reiki, meditation, essential oils, hallucinogenics, marijuana, CBD, vitamins, exercise and yoga. There's certain types of teas, acupuncture and acupressure, nutrient-rich diet, and just changing your eating habits. So just to lightly touch on some of those.
Can I just say,
yeah.
I definitely, I put two and two together, but I definitely had originally thought you said sexual oils.
I mean,
Sexual.
that can help some anxiety too.
That helps too.
I'm just saying.
Not wrong.
Essential oils can turn into some sexual oils. If you wanted to go that route, I would suggest lavender. Since you brought up the essential oils, so specific essential oils that help for anxiety and depression is neroli, grapefruit, sweet orange, frankincense, jasmine, and sandalwood. And that coupled with like the supplements, saffron. So with saffron, just 30 milligrams of saffron a day. You can get them in capsules. Sometimes have been proven to replace specifically, I can't pronounce right, citalopram and fluoxetine. So those specific medications, maybe, if you take those ones, ask your doctor, because they've done a lot of studies on just the supplement of saffron doing the same kind of things as that. So that's more for the oils and the supplements. Also with like Reiki, that's like energy channeling.
Reiki is awesome. I've had it before, like
me too,
for an extensive period of time.
Perfect
for
example.
Weeks and weeks at a time, and it's a cool experience.
It really is.
I did the.
I feel like it's just another way.
There's like two different kinds,
Yep.
right?
Yep, there's different kinds. My mom's a certified Reiki healer. So like Reiki has been around since the early 20th century. They've been using it for healing. So this is not something just
it's Japanese.
Right. This is not some new like crackpot idea that just came up in the last 10 years. This is obviously it's doing something if it's been around that long, but there's no actual side effects of it. So it's definitely something to try. But it also helps pain, anxiety, fatigue, depression, headaches, nausea, insomnia, and boost your mood. So there's no negative effects of trying that.
Yeah. And it's just another way to move energy, get it flowing.
And then another one I wanted to focus on was meditation. So there's different types of meditation. There's a transcendental meditation. It's the use of like mantras, sounds, chants, repetitiously until you transcend through. So like the White Album they were doing this kind of meditation for the Beatles' White Album. So this is obviously one of the common type.
Mudras and mantras.
Yeah.
Do the hand things.
So that's what you kind of think of with that kind of meditation. You have dynamic meditation. the use of breaking old thought patterns to create new ones. So this is a little bit into what you were kind of talking about, and kind of like programming yourself internally. There's obviously religious use of scriptures, prayer, ritual practices, quietly to get closer to God. And then mindfulness. So mindfulness is a lot more up and coming. It's also called Siddhapatthana, which means to keep attention inside. So mindfulness, they're doing this a lot more in a lot of the schools too, especially like into more like private schools and charter schools, having actual mindfulness rooms and having kids practice mindfulness. It's understanding your inner self by exercising your mind, use of breath and focus, easily being able to, get into yourself. And you can just download an app. There's one called Calm, and there's one called Headspace. And mindfulness is seen to increase mortality and the want to help other people. So for outreach for that.
On a side note, schools, they just allowed certain schools started doing yoga in school.
Yeah, that's getting more popular.
For a long time,
I love that.
Do it because of like church and state issues.
Right.
It was considered like a religious practice.
Right. And you're seeing more of these different things that help anxiety and depression because it's becoming so common. I think the more we see it integrated into regular society and being something normally seen, the less, weird it is. The more you understand and you learn, and it's something that you see all the time. It's not something to be scared about or like thinking it's some hippie thing.
Yeah. And I think it's too with the pandemic is a huge thing. And that's why, and I hope that, because I've always said mental health should be like have its own core curriculum in schools, like from the time kids are going to school.
Especially in schools.
Yeah, it shouldn't be just like umbrella and you touch here. It needs to be so much bigger. And with the pandemic, it's one of the good things of one of the good changes that I think the pandemic is bringing, because the pandemic is highlighting people's anxiety and depression. Because anyone who has it, like I have anxiety, right? That if I don't know how to take care of myself or use the tools, then can turn into depression. And it gets worse. You can be triggered, right? So it's one of those things where you can live normally, right? You don't really have it unless you're stressed or you have things going on, and then it can be triggered and you can get these like really bad OCD habits and things like that. And so it's with the pandemic, people are being very triggered where their mental health is coming up to the forefront, and it's just like rearing its head, and it's kind of like, look at me, and people are sort of having to do that.
I believe pandemic specific, there are some statistics, if anyone would care to look into them, there's been an enormous amount of children actually attempting, suicide attempts and completing them like an outrageous amount throughout the entire pandemic. Just,
Yeah, it's definitely, COVID is changing a lot of things. I've lost a lot of people myself throughout COVID. So I'm really glad we're touching on anxiety and depressions.
Or addiction too, addiction as well during the pandemic, I believe. Overdoses, as usual.
Right, and it's stuff that needs to be talked about. A lot of people will talk about a lot of the different parts of being quarantined and COVID. Everyone's worried about toilet paper in the past, all this, but I think it's more serious to focus on these kind of things that a lot of people don't like to talk about, or it's not as comfortable to talk about. That if there's not someone out there talking about it, no one's really going to learn, or they'll feel alone. They won't want to express that they're having an issue,
right?
Or they won't look for solutions.
Yeah, especially because staying busy is a coping mechanism. Being overly busy too can be a trauma response, right? Like when I go through something hard, I will like get a third job and like just try and fill my schedule up.
On that one.
And that's what people do. And then with the pandemic, when people have lost their jobs or they can't get other jobs, they don't have their main coping mechanism, and they have to sit with themselves with all of that heavy stuff. that they try to avoid looking at, and it's looking at them head on, and there's nowhere to run from it,
Either
really.
look at that, or they're looking at the TV, and
Zoning out.
you know what?
Yeah.
That's not the greatest.
So like another good thing is CBD, which has been around, but it's definitely gained headway in like the last 5 years. So CBD is cannabidiol, and it is, am I saying that correctly?
Cannabinol.
But it, like
Cannabinol.
cannabinol,
What does it say?
cannabidiol.
Cannabinol.
I've heard it right before, but I didn't know how to say it. But
Cannabinol.
it's
No THC.
I think she's saying it.
0.03%.
Right,
Right, it's no THC.
Cannabinol.
It's the medical properties of marijuana. So it's a compound found primarily in the leaves and flowers of the hemp plant, used for healing. So you can find it as like a topical cream. You can find it as a tincture, oil to vape, bud, gummies, pills. You can even get CBD cigarettes. And there's all different ways to find it. And I suggest that to people that, aren't going like the medical marijuana route, but CBD is a good first start. It's all those medical properties of it. It helps with sleep, fibromyalgia, pain, MS, anxiety, arthritis, and it possibly is helpful for cancer, which of course studies are still going out for that, but definitely recommend it. Actually, I have here, this is a balm that I definitely support and prove. It's called Green Gorilla. If you can see that, I got this at a local shop. And so I started with not Green Gorilla. I started using and testimonies from friends as well. There's the original one I got. It's a CBD balm that had more like menthol in it, and you can rub it on your muscles, joint pains, all of that. So that worked great. And then I found this one that was more like eucalyptus rather than menthol, because a lot of people have skin irritation from menthol products. So I went more that route. So I got an original bottle that was like $30. It worked great. I've had my friends use it. I've had friends that have had like work injuries, spinal pain, neck pain, shoulders pain, that they would wake up every morning with immense pain that they'd have to medicate the pain away. And they tried for a while not doing the medication and using this, and it would help immensely. I've used it down my spine. It helps.
Yeah.
I recently had a friend use it that
I
had,
need some of that.
it works so great. I had a friend that had what was the wisdom tooth was having issues, and she was having horrible pains, and I just had to rub it right on the outside, and it seeps through the skin, goes right to the bone, and helps relieve that pain. Everyone knows tooth pain is like the worst pain. So it was working so good. I went and picked up
when I got my wisdom teeth out.
I'm telling you, it works for so many things: joint pain, knee pain, if you do sports, if you hurt in the morning, arthritis, nerve damage, you name it, it seeps through. It works wonders. So that one works so well. I went and got an upgrade. This is more like the $65 bottle. Sounds expensive, but it's worth it. This one has arnica in it, which has a lot of those same exact properties that I was naming. So it makes it twice as powerful. So you have the CBD and arnica in it. And so this is twice as much as the last one. And everybody that I've had use it reports works twice as good. So definitely Green Gorilla CBD products, I approve.
Nice.
And like anything else, when it comes to CBD, be mindful of what it is that you're taking. Read the labels, know the amounts. I wouldn't recommend just going to a corner store or bodega getting it. Try to get the stuff that looks properly packaged, not the comic book looking type of packaging.
I got this from like a Feel Right. I don't know. Feel Right's like everywhere, national or anything like that, but those kind of stores, you'll find holistic alternatives. Especially if you want to start using CBD products, something like a cream or a salve. If you just do a spot test, you're good to go, versus like a tincture where you want to kind of double check, do your research, talk to your doctor to make sure you're doing the right amounts. Because I've had friends that have done tinctures that they've done too much and it just makes you fall asleep rather than having a more productive, pain-free day. So just be careful with things like that. But CBD isn't too harmful of an alternative.
Not at all.
And you don't get any kind of high off of it if you're someone who doesn't like weed or doesn't smoke weed. Definitely.
Be mindful though that there
Recommend it.
are very low trace amounts
Right.
of
There's like a
THC.
0.03,
So
something like that.
if you were to take some sort of urine
Mhm.
test, you would probably be positive, but
I'm
they
glad you
would
mentioned
they
that.
would be able to tell that you're using a CBD product versus smoking weed off the street.
But wouldn't
or
that depend on their
dispensary.
tests? Because all these different places have different tests that test for different
Well,
things.
if they're testing levels.
Oh,
We're
levels.
not
Okay,
talking
yeah.
like a dipstick.
Right,
But if you're
okay.
going to like a,
I'm glad you
probation
said that in case
inpatient,
someone's like, oh, I could do
job.
this. And
Yeah,
no, that's a
Yeah.
great point. But that is kind of my delving into anxiety and depression. Of course, you can go on a whole topic with it, but just to kind of throw out some alternatives and to get you, researching if you think you have any issues. Like me right now, I don't really suffer with any depression or anxiety, but I do get anxiety attacks every so often. So I'll go back to these remedies because I'm not going to try to get prescribed something for random, spaced out attacks. So this stuff helps me a lot.
And you always
and the
want to
stuff
get
they
in front
prescribe
of
for
the
that is
anxiety.
can get very dangerous. It's really choppy.
You said what?
The stuff that they prescribe for it.
Oh, yeah.
So benzos are that and
Oh, that's
alcohol.
dangerous.
Not
It
even
can get-
not even benzos. Let's not even talk about the narcotics. What about the SSRIs
Oh yeah.
and all those things?
It can get dangerous, and people a lot of times don't know what they're getting into. Like if you're someone who's never heard of any kind of medication, you're very ignorant to that spectrum, and they just start prescribing you benzos, and you don't necessarily know that they're habit forming.
Well, these
Yeah.
seizures.
Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
of, and like a lot of people when they start this stuff, sure they get told like here are the side effects, but every medication has side
Yeah.
effects, so you
Or
kind of
like
ignore
not
it.
to mix
tell you
them
about
with
as much as they
alcohol,
tell you
like
before you get the vaccine.
Right.
You know?
right, like the synergistic effect, mixing it with alcohol or anything like that. And a really important thing too is alcohol and benzos are the two things that you can actually die from withdrawing from. So those
Right.
ones you have to be careful.
So it's really good to try some other alternatives before you get into it. But we're going to go on to our conspiracy head. I know what Sarah was talking about tied right into my holistic review. So we're just switching right on over to our conspiracy theories.
Yeah, in the light of everything that we've been talking about and that we have mentioned, and considering it's April 420 is coming up, and with the recent legislation that was passed in New York State, we can't
Oh,
help
yeah.
but, to bring up weed,
Oh yeah,
marijuana, cannabis,
I
THC,
forgot all about that.
I was right into it.
and this is very recent. What's today's date when we recording? It's like the 3rd, right?
This will post
So
first week of April.
they
So
they passed this shit on April Fool's Day, so it's very recent news, and none of the laws are
How
necessarily worked out.
ironic.
I know around April Fools.
Right.
So
And,
dumb.
none of these laws are necessarily worked out, so I could understand how tons of people would love to be celebrating. I would love to celebrate. There's a lot of cool stuff that's going to happen. For small example, if you've gotten weed charges back in the day, they're going to owe you some sort of restitution for those types of things.
Are they
For-
gonna do
Oh, nice.
that's what they have done in other states. But people are just thinking you can run around smoking the car and pass weed amongst each other, sell pot and all that stuff. I do not think that's how the laws are. And that's how it is in a lot of the other states. So from, in the light of conspiracies, I don't believe that they're going to allow these laws to be very relaxed in the sense to where we can take great advantage of them. Like if we wanted to start businesses like they do in a lot of the other states, from things that I've read, you have to be very well off to get involved in it. So this is just going to be another thing that makes the rich richer, and they're going to force people into the dispensaries. They're not like they're saying you can have plants, and these are just my opinions, right? But if they're telling us we can grow plants and grow weed and sell it amongst each other, I'm sure they're going to want some tax revenue from that.
So I don't think they've approved any type of selling. I think they're going to actually end up like hitting you with the book harder for selling because they're going to eventually be setting up shops to make a profit off of
Right.
it. They are allowing you to have like whatever 3
And-
ounces here and 6 plants there, but it's supposed to be for
and-
personal.
And this is not free market freedom in the sense of how it is in California or
Right.
Colorado. You can just grow some weed and let it go, sell it
Yeah.
to the dispensary, sell it in a head shop,
Right.
however you want to do it. So I imagine, you know, if you're 21 or 18, whatever, it's going to be, you have the card, you go to the dispensary, they'll let you get some stuff from there. It's probably going to be very low THC and priced tremendously to force you into getting a card, which forces you into the New York State Registry.
Right. You're gonna be in the
Through
system.
the DMV, they're going to know everyone who's smoking. You might get it a little bit cheaper now, but now you're in the system, and that brings up this whole idea of who's controlling it and who's growing it. The people that love it and care about the plant and don't want it to change, or pharmaceutical companies that aren't going to care either way, and you're going to get who knows what kind. The weed
Right.
has been strong enough for the past 10, 20 years.
That doesn't
and
need to be
and it
changed.
keeps
like
and it
that.
keeps getting crazy. If you take an
Yeah.
edible, it's like smoking like a quarter pound in a joint.
Right.
Like that's very unnecessary.
And then
you know?
once you
Yeah.
get
And
with
any stoner will tell you that. Like,
well, once you get into big business with it too, like I'm worried, like I'm not even a weed smoker, I'm just worried for.
overdosing
weed
off-
smoking friends, but
overdosing off of the joint
I'm
is
worried,
gonna
like,
be very
Once
possible.
it gets big business, there's gonna be a bunch of companies that are like, okay, we're gonna grow weed as a company and we're gonna add a bunch of medication into it and say, well, here's the weed for anxiety and put benzos in it or put, you know what I mean? Like
And
mix
Yeah.
it up with stuff that is going to turn into a whole nother litany of issues that we
And
can't even
then
foresee
Yeah.
yet.
what happens? Freedom decreases, and now you're going to need to talk to a doctor and get this in particular strain
Yeah.
prescribed for this in particular ailment. No longer is weed just like the cure-all for several different things. Now they're weaponizing it for
Yeah.
various purposes. That's not cool. And then you're going to hear all this propaganda in the street about the street weed being bad and it being linked to guns and terrorism.
Right. They'll make it, okay, now weed's
and
good, but our
gangs.
weed, not
They're
the person that you know's weed.
like if
Right,
you're looking
yeah.
at it from this angle, it's hard to believe that they're legalizing it for any other interest than to make money, and not to make tax
Yeah.
money to help the state. We're talking to make billionaires,
Right.
trillionaires.
Big businesses,
They-
I'll get
they-
new big
They,
businesses.
they don't care about the people that have been arrested for it or marginalized for it or haven't been able to get their medicine or have passed away because they couldn't get medicine or any of those things. So I do think we should celebrate, this minor achievement, but until
Right.
these laws are worked out, I think there's a very long distance that we're
Also,
going
yeah,
to
just
tread
being
through
realistic.
some muddy
as
water
well.
for it to turn out to
Definitely.
be the best thing for everybody. And then they're going to get rappers in front of it and musicians and actors. They're all going to have their own
Right.
strains and stuff.
Right, just like their sneaker lines.
They're not going to be the business owners.
Mhm.
They're not going to own the
They're just gonna be
patent
the
to that
face of
strain.
it.
Yeah, they're just gonna be the
Yeah.
face and another manipulated party in the regime of this conspiracy that we live every day called life. in
So
America.
basically, it's like stay awake. Yes, it's great that there's freedom, especially for people who have issues like anxiety, depression, recovery.
Right. People who need
Good
it.
thing it can be legal so that people that need it, that haven't been able to get medical cards for whatever
Right.
reason are able to get it. But at the same time, for your regular recreational smoker, in the long run, this might be more damaging.
Th-
But
this-
it's
and
right.
this
keep
is-
an eye out.
This is for New York
Yeah.
specific. It's very
Yeah,
different
yeah.
from what's happening in the rest of
And
the
people are
country.
expecting to happen in New York, what's happened in other states, and
Yeah,
that's
gotta
not,
be
I mean,
close.
everyone knows New York does things a little bit more rigid, a little differently, depending, so don't automatically assume that it's gonna be the same thing as like a Colorado or a California situation.
Yeah.
The eyes peeled for
But
that.
yeah, I would like to celebrate it as much as anybody for all of the same reasons and various reasons as everybody else. But I can't help but to be skeptical of it when I'm looking at who's involved running it and making these decisions. And
Right. Yeah.
While half-ass placating to the masses. Like, if you didn't trust anything that these people said before, why are you trusting them now?
Right.
With no regard to political sides or anything. You didn't trust them 10 years ago, why are you trusting them now? You didn't trust them 2
Right.
years ago, why are you trusting them now? You didn't
Yeah.
trust them 6 months ago, why not?
Right.
That's
Yeah.
my opinion. And then to wrap it up, just to substantiate some things that we said in previous episodes about some wild stuff and millionaires and billionaires being involved in pedophilia and like unbelievable shit that people get kicked off of platforms for saying and stuff that seems to be real, but you never get the full story behind it. Recently, there's a guy named Peter Nygaard. I don't know if you ever heard of him. He owns Nygaard Fashions or Opportunities, big business mogul, billionaire business guy, right? Chris Hansen was just involved in the apprehension of him, which took, a multiple of years to get close to him. He almost caught Epstein, but for political reasons had to fall back, and his show got canceled and all these other reasons.
Yeah.
But this guy, he was arrested, found guilty in 3 different countries: the Bahamas, Canada, and the United States. Found guilty of the assault thousands of women for human trafficking, child trafficking, sexual assault, murder, dozens of all those types of charges. And what he was doing was paying women and sometimes forcing women, obviously, to become pregnant in order to get rid of the kid, to then use the fetus for stem cells that he would come from him because he was the father, and then use them stem cells to inject into himself to have longevity and like live forever, which there's science behind that, and this is like legal stuff.
Super culty.
You can pay for these procedures in Silicon Valley. You can buy people's blood and do stuff to make yourself better. So this is all
rich enough.
This is all really true, but this guy has been doing this in the shadows in the worst way for the longest time. And you hear all these conspiracy theories that kind of circle around these claims and saying these things, but you never get real who is it that's doing
like news facts,
like
somebody apprehended
and like definitive, like he was eating the kids and like all that kind of crazy stuff. So he would inject the stem cells hoping to live forever. They got him in Winnipeg in prison, and since he's been locked up, he hasn't been able to participate in any of these treatments. So apparently he's like 80 something years old.
But he was probably looking way younger than that.
Yeah, when you look at him in his arrest, he looks like maybe like 40 or 50 with like plastic surgery. And then he's probably
declining fast.
His like skin's falling off the bones. He's all screwed up. But there's a
wait. So is it kind of like if he can't get the treatments, he'll age more quickly, or it'll be, you know what I mean?
He'll start to look the age he would have looked had he not ever done anything.
Oh, so he starts to rapidly
on top of that, he'll
been.
go back to where he was, and then because his body's used to the intake of this stuff.
Oh, okay, so it's not something you could do, once or twice, and you'll just be, younger longer.
This is he kind of probably does it like dialysis, like to keep going.
Well, thousands of women, and some of these women are like very famous models in the fashion industry that have came forward and spoke. Like, this is a very real documented thing. There's a very good documentary about it. It's called Unseemingly. You can find it on the internet somewhere, but it goes into very real specifics, like all the stuff that like people like Alex Jones would be saying about billionaires eating kids and drinking the blood and the cult stuff and all that. That's what this guy was doing, and they got him guilty as charged, which is weird because think about all the people employed to make something like that possible.
People don't get caught. Like, what would you think made him get caught? Not probably thousands of other people who are on a radar that are doing similar,
he probably made the wrong person mad, or didn't pay the right person off, or something, or the powers that be are like, yo, we got to give him somebody.
Right, because people are getting wise to this.
But it's wild, man. And then when you look into these people's histories, they're all friends. Like, this guy's hanging out with Epstein, who's hanging out with the Clintons, who's hanging out with them and them and them, and they're all, the whole game. But that's some more recent news that really substantiates some of the conspiracy theories that we've spoken about.
And it's easy to just ask something off like, nah, that's just a conspiracy theory. But what about all the times where conspiracy theories became no longer theories?
Right.
Exactly.
Wonder, hey, maybe I should listen to what some of these theories are. It doesn't mean you need to believe them or not, but at least be aware that those kind of things are possibly going on.
Yeah, and just listening too, everyone, it's always important to use your own discernment, but some people don't even want to listen, right? They
Right.
just they just brush it off. But
Well,
I think at least
some
listen.
people they roll with ignorance is bliss,
Right,
The way
right.
you work, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's true.
But this is a show of, just gotta,
Who dat?
I don't know what happened.
Dude, mess up
Where'd she go? She's still
the
there.
screen just disappeared.
Sorry about that.
I just
Sarah.
still
We had some
recording.
quick technical difficulties. Like, we had to-
Well, we're about to
Please
wrap up
hold.
either way. I was just basically
Right,
saying,
yeah.
the show.
I was
as
gonna
we
say that's our cue.
the show, smile, learn, wander, wonder, and
One thing I want to mention for everybody,
Mhm.
and because it's 420 in April and everything, and people are really cool into music. If you've or like music, if you've ever heard of the verses stuff that happens, they take like two iconic people and have them
go against each other.
demonstrate their catalogs against each other, whether it's R&B, rock and roll, hip hop, or any of that. Well, specifically on 420, it will be Redman and Method Man.
Nice.
Going
Nice.
ahead with their whole catalog.
I'll watch that.
Hey.
Yeah, I think it'd just be cool. For
That's
people
an
to hear
awesome
about.
drop for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
Thank you for hanging out with us. Again, I want to, special thank you to Turn It Up Live. Again, www.turnitupproductions.com. Special shout out to Michael Anthony for making this all possible, and tune in every month, to get fed again. Thank you.
Yes.
Peace.
Peace.
Bye.